don't take too much longer than 7 minutes. So you're like my accountability circle now. Okay, so she told you a little bit about who Geil was. So I got some lovely pictures of Geil. It was a fantastic lady, and as she said, she started Emergenetics. And show of hands, anybody taken the Emergenetics profile? So there's a lot of you, but not, it's not super saturated, maybe 50%. Well, I would tell you, and I mean this quite sincerely, Geil changed my life. Because she made me think about things from such a different perspective. So I'm going to give you, I have 7, hopefully I can do it in 7 minutes. The first one, and the most really changing for me, was know yourself. So Emergenetics is all about how do I think, how do I like to be presented with information, how do I like to interact with other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she puts you through this thing where, so there's quadrants. I won't explain it too much because that would take too much time, but there's quadrants and people think in different ways, so I'm like an analytical creative. And my social need is like this big on a pie graph. Red is like this big, you can barely see it. And I really just kind of had gone through my life until I was about 40 when I had the unbelievable honor of being able to participate in the influence program where I never really thought about it. I just thought everybody thinks like me, right? And if you don't present like that, I'm kind of like done with you because you're not even making sense. And I'll find someone who makes sense to me, right? So I got to this, and I learned all this about myself, and I thought, oh man, I've been missing out for like a long time here, right? So it was very eye-opening and really made me think so differently about how I approach people. And it drove me to really open my mind, right? And think about, I mean, I had customers, right? And I'm like, well, if you're not making sense to me, then you're just not making sense, right? But if I think, oh my gosh, they're probably doing that for a reason, and if I understood their reason and the perspective and what they were trying to accomplish, I bet I could find more win-wins. I bet I could earn more business, and I bet I could have better relationships, right? And win. So really open my mind. When you do that, and you open your own mind, and you talk to other people in a fashion that appreciates their perspective, it's empowering for everybody, right? Everybody feels like they're being heard. Everybody feels like their needs are being considered, and it really changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. It's fantastic, right? I would say, I wouldn't have called myself unkind. I actually think most people would call me kind, maybe not. Well, maybe not, I don't know. You can ask around, I don't know. I'd like to think so. But when you are dismissive of the way another person thinks because it doesn't make sense to you, because that's not how you think, it can come off as pretty unkind, right? It's not in any way welcoming, and it doesn't help that other person engage in the conversation with you. So she was very stark in her presentation to you of the mirror that she was holding up, right? She's holding up a mirror to you and saying, Beth, you're talking to people like that, how do you think that's being heard? And it was very eye-opening, and kind of upsetting, right? And like, oof, I've been screwing this up for a long time. But it really helped me with my kids. I've got one child who likes like 7 people, and I'm not even sure I'm one of them. And I have always, from the time he was about 10, when I went through this program, I started saying, hey, have you thought about the other person's perspective? Maybe they're acting that way not to drive you crazy or alienate you. And I'd like to think that it's helped him. I don't know, he's getting ready to have his first child, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe that'll be a sobering moment. Okay, so all these things I've talked about up until this point are really about inclusion, right? I'm including your perspective. I'm including your hopes and dreams. I'm including the things that you want to accomplish. And I believe that inclusion is an incredible force multiplier for any workforce anywhere. If you can come to work and believe that people hear you and they see you for who you are and they understand your perspective or are at least willing to listen to it, it makes the things that you're able to accomplish bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? It's just an incredible way to get the most out of people, right? So knowing how you think, knowing how they think, thinking about how you present, all of that includes people, and it makes the collective effort multiply itself. She was a community builder. Of all the things that she was a community builder. I know people who traveled to Africa with her. I know people who did influence and focus. I know people who did defining leadership. I know people who went through her training program to become an Emergenetics, I'm going to use the word expert. I think she had a better name for it than that. But all of those things were about community. I bet if I know 100 people really well, Geil knew 10,000 people really well. I mean, she just was all about building community and making people feel included as a part of that community. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I have 1 minute left, look at me, I'm going to be multi goals, although I've gotten tears in the back of the car, I'm doing okay. Extend grace. So when I first met Geil, she had just had a stroke, and she was relearning how to talk. And one day she showed up with a brooch on her back. Like here. I almost wore one in her honor today, and then I thought, I can't. That's too crazy for me. But anyway, and I spent the whole day thinking she had done it because she was in the stroke thing. And she said something about it. She said, I thought you of all people would have said something to me about this today. And I said, listen, I'm trying to take your lesson. You told me to always be graceful with people, and I didn't want to hurt your feelings because you look dumb with that thing on your back. She's like, no, I'm just trying to tell you to expand your mind and think about doing things differently. I'm like, nobody but you will ever wear a brooch on their back, but okay, all right. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up. What I would say is, maybe these lessons work for you. Maybe you're super self-actualized and you don't need them. But if you're not, think about, number one, go take the Emergenetics test. You should all understand how you think. And then ask the people that you know to take it to, and you'll learn a lot about your family and your friends, and it will help you with your relationships. I loved her. She was a great lady. Huge impact for me personally. So honored to be able to talk about her. Okay, almost made it. Okay, thank you.